Hello.
Hello, welcome to the board. This is episode 33. I'm Kirsten Donaldson, this is Gavin Coughlin and Paul Llewellyn joining us on the couches. We're all back together again. Today we're going to be talking about Arbejdsglaede, which
Good pronunciation, I like that.
I wrote it phonetically, but I actually left it at my desk, but I've been practicing all morning. Gav, how do you pronounce it?
Arbelsgarble.
Yeah.
That's how I pronounce it.
Okay, well,
I think that's the correct pronunciation.
Paul, as the person who came up with the idea for today's show, do you want to explain a wee bit about the concept first, and then we can talk a bit further about it?
What triggered me thinking about this, I saw this a while ago, the TED Talk by Alexander Kurif, I think his name is, and we a couple of days ago we had Sandy Mamoli, one of the local coaches, came in to talk about their with David Moll from TradeMe came in to talk about their experiences while they were over in Sweden, Stockholm to be exact, talking to the guys at Spotify, and they said that the Swedish have a unique disposition, and I was saying, well, maybe that's not just the Swedish; it could be the whole of Scandinavia, because they have this unique. They have a word which means.
I think what is unique is that they're apparently the only people, the Scandies, that have that word.
Have that word, which means happiness at work.
Arbejdsglaede.
Arbelsgarble.
That's right.
Arbejdsglaede.
So arbets means work.
And glade means glad or happy, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, but they're the only. Those three countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, are the only three countries that concatenate those two words together. And, there are other countries in the world.
Interestingly, Japan has a word. Can you remember?
No, it starts with K though.
Starts with K, and it is work to death.
Work to death.
So they're kind of the entirely opposite end of the spectrum.
Death by work, in other words.
So don't go and work in Japan.
Yeah. So just interesting, and I watched the TED Talk a couple of times, and I'm fascinated by how important important is in what you do. We spend a lot of time at work, and it's important to be happy in what you're doing, because otherwise it's just a job. And if you're not happy, you're not passionate, and you're not feeling fulfilled, all those kinds of things. So
it's interesting when sometimes when we do workshops on Scrum, we talk to people about all the benefits of Scrum, and when we start talking about team morale and team happiness, not everybody cares about that part. You can see them glaze over, because that's not about delivering. That's not about being on time or under budget. So some people actually don't see the value in that, which always shocks me, because obviously a happier workplace produces
productive.
Better.
Yeah,
products.
I guess they just don't see the link. I guess because a lot of people are taught that success is about things like profit,
that's right.
and completing to deadlines and keeping the minister off the front page of news and those sort of items. And so they haven't had that connection made between the fact that if people are happy, then productivity follows.
And like the simple example they give in the TED Talk is the bus driver who is really cheerful when people get onto his bus. He was like, this is the example he gave.
Who is this bus driver? I've never met a bus driver that's cheerful when I go on the bus.
Exactly, and how sort of weird does it make you feel?
Actually, it is lovely when it does really happen, isn't it?
That's right. When you get a great bus driver who's really friendly and really willing to sort of help out and whatever, then the bus atmosphere is completely different from when that bus driver is a complete miserable sod and driving badly, slamming the brakes on, cursing under his breath.
Not stopping for people.
I've got some statistics about happiness in the workplace. If you'd be interested in hearing any of them.
Sure.
So 66% of satisfied employees put in extra effort at work. You need at least 3 hours of therapy to begin relieving depression or anxiety.
What relevance is that second item?
I guess that's.
Well, if you're depressed or anxious about work, then you need to overcome that, and a lot of people overcome that. The short answer is to go out and get drunk.
Yeah,
I see that a lot in
therapy, isn't it?
In startup communities. Yeah, that's exactly. It's a form of therapy, but
it's talk therapy, really, isn't it?
Talking a great form of therapy.
People,
And I suppose they need to take time off for to.
So that's the impact it has on the business.
Unsatisfied employees are 11 times more likely to move to a new organisation, which just makes sense, really.
Yeah.
And the happiest workplaces I've seen have very low staff turnovers.
Yeah.
58% of employees seldom, if ever, receive thanks from their manager, which I think is pretty shocking. Because people a lot of the time just get chastised for making mistakes, but never get thumbs up for doing the good stuff.
And we talked about that a couple of shows ago about the love languages thing,
and how people receive appreciation and recognise it.
And then and the fact that a functional relationship needed a 5-to-1 ratio of,
that's a lot.
of good to bad and things said, and a dysfunctional relationship was a 1-to-1 ratio or less.
Yeah.
So
let's see. Yes, happy workers are 22% more productive than unhappy workers. That's from Andrew Oswald, the professor at Warwick Business School. So obviously being 22% more productive is a benefit for the business there. Happy workers are 28.4% less absent than unhappy workers. And the stats go on basically, and they attach some monetary value there, which mightn't equate to New Zealand. But obviously, if you do have a happy workforce and you don't have people leaving all the time and that they're being more productive, then why wouldn't you try to maintain that and to increase that?
And in my mind, especially being a former software developer, knowledge workers are particularly hard to please because they are quite complex creatures in terms of what they do. They solve problems all day, and they've been doing that. Like from my example, I've been programming since I was 11 years old. I'm quite passionate about that, and I if I don't feel fulfilled.
That's 30 years.
It is.
As of yesterday.
It's 33 years to be exact.
33, right? I'm not very good at maths, but wow.
And so if I'm, that's my job, but I'm also it was also a hobby to start with. But if I'm not feeling creative or fulfilled at work, then obviously I'm just going to it's just going to be a humdrum for me, and I'm just going to I'm going to find other things to do essentially to tax my brain.
It's interesting though. The big takeaway for me from that, I only watched the short version of TED Talk, but the big takeaway for me was that responsibility starts with the individual. When people are talking about happiness in the workplace, a lot of it is about managers or leaders or whoever, putting measures in place to make sure that people are able to do what they want and that they're happy. But this talked about people taking responsibility for themselves for making change, and it had a great example as well, which I'm just about to tell you about.
Okay.
Just quickly, it was about some junior nurses that started at a hospital, were really excited about their job, and they got there and they found it a quite toxic environment where no one was happy. So they started with one measure that they introduced, whereby they would give one employee a day praise and stick a little stuffed elephant on their uniform, and within 6 months that workplace had turned around, and that started with 3 of the most junior team members making a change and taking responsibility for that. I thought that was quite an exciting concept rather than everything flowing downwards.
And so I think all management has to do really is say you're allowed to be happy at work, and or if they recognise that there's a problem with the happiness levels at work, then say, well, you guys are allowed to be happy.
I don't think even in that case, no one said to these girls, young nurses,
that's right.
They just took it responsibility in their own hands. It didn't require any buy-in from management. It was just a little thing.
It's because they were new into that environment. But I was thinking, if you had a toxic environment that you were trying to detoxify, you need some trigger points, that's all, to get things started.
Oh, absolutely.
And those girls were a trigger point.
I think also the 3 steps to happiness that they mentioned in this talk is a really good start for everybody as well.
Cool.
Yeah, and
do you know what they were?
Yeah, well, the first one was a level 5 good morning. I believe so. When you come in the morning, just give a big, genuine good morning to the people there.
So
and
what does a level 5 look like to you, Gav?
Let's see.
Demonstrate that.
Good morning, Paul.
Yeah.
You are looking fantastic.
Quite loud.
I'd
find that quite overwhelming.
That was level 5. I was trying to do level 5. I'm probably more of a usually just a level.
You're just like, sorry, I'm late kind of thing.
That's right.
That was what it was this morning.
I'll just do the classic Kiwi hello.
But I think saying good morning is really important.
It is.
I don't think that the classic hello is a level 5 at all. I think it's a level 1, to be honest with you.
I
think, but if you said you look fantastic today, then that would make me shine all morning.
No one ever says that to me here.
Yeah.
You guys.
You do look good this morning.
You say it to each other. You never say it to me. You guys are hopeless.
Be so much happier.
I want some more of that.
We should all try that.
And another one was celebrating your victories.
Yeah.
Which you talked about as well. Not only concentrating on the things that didn't go so well, but really understanding things that did go well. And we spoke a while back about project retrospectives, and one thing that guy did in the project retrospective, which took 3 days, was a very long one, but he made people talk about the project and what went well on the project and use artifacts to describe what went well in the projects and what they achieved. So they actually started to realize all the good stuff that they did, where they had been concentrating on all the negative stuff, and they realized that it wasn't as much of a failure as they thought. They had a lot of successes.
Yeah, I mean, how common is that in retrospective? So people, like, you ran that retrospective for that company, and they said, oh wow, we're allowed to talk about the good things that happened.
Yeah.
We've never been allowed to talk about the good things that happened before.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
too much time dwelling on the bad.
Yeah, that's all the
Yeah.
retrospectives just focused on what was wrong,
Yeah.
not what was right, which is, anyway.
The last one of these steps I'm interested in, I might have a bash at maybe today because I'll forget after that, but is list 3 good things that happened today at the end of the day. And obviously they can be quite simple things like I managed to ace making my latte this morning, for example.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people think that, and at least years ago, well, certain places I worked in anyway, I worked in a big telecommunications place in an awful financial centre before, and the thing that everybody thought would increase workplace happiness was bonuses and money. And it was all money driven, it was all bonus driven, and it just obviously didn't, like, you could just step in there to see that it didn't make anybody happy. And while it's true that if you get paid too little, you feel undervalued, and you can get really down about that, but paying people more and more and more isn't what actually makes you happy. It's not what you're...
Well, yeah, obviously it can't, and there's a ceiling on how much money is going to make you happy.
Yeah, that's right.
If there's a fundamental problem in your work environment, then
nothing's gonna help
make you happy unless you I don't know. It's interesting that, and we've talked about this before, the responsibility of the company to employ somebody is to take the issue of money off the table for them, so that they don't, so that they're happy to come to work and do their jobs, and they don't have to think about.
Yeah, I mean, and the people who are chasing the money probably are not a good cultural fit for a company like ours, and they will naturally leave, But one of the other things I liked about this talk was talking about liking your colleagues, and that's something that we really concentrate on here when we're recruiting as well. It's not just technical ability, because actually a lot of that can be taught if they're reasonably intelligent, but it's how will they fit in with the team.
That's right.
Because we spend so much time together, it's nice if we can actually genuinely like each other.
And we have to
walk through the door as well.
And we have to form very tight relationships, and that's the collaborative nature of what we do. And so we have to be comfortable, close to each other. And I was just talking about the 3 levels of things with the team that I'm coaching. The 3 levels of things that you're prepared to say. And I think it was 1 was things that you'd say to strangers or acquaintances. 2, the things that you'd say to your close friends. And 3, the things that you'd say when you were drunk. And I was
going to choose to family for the 3rd one, actually, because that's always very blunt as well.
Right. And I was just saying, and I was saying to these guys, you work really closely together. You really should be, and the organisation's making a big ask on you in this case, and so you should really be saying the things that.
Level 3?
Yeah, you should.
No way.
You should be saying the things.
I've heard some of the things that you guys say at level 3. I don't think it's appropriate.
Honestly. No.
It's all
brutal,
lovely, happy, fluffy
brutal
stuff.
And then there's a lot of things that you can do to help increase your workplace happiness, and a lot of things that management can do as well. I know here, for example, there's some nice little touches, like we have a bowl of fruit, and we have a great coffee machine, so you don't have to spend $10 a day on coffee, and everybody loves that machine. And we have stand-up desks because people wanted that option, and
which is great. I love that stand-up desk.
Yeah.
I love standing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just little things like even when staff members, bake stuff and bring stuff in, and people share stuff around.
Just
like
me and Ruka, to be fair,
and
most
Bradley,
of the time.
Bradley needs to start.
He needs to do a little bit more, because me and Ruka have really carried the can in the last year.
Yeah. And we also we socialise at times. I think that's really important.
And then there's beers on Friday night, which is a great chance to sit down and talk about something other than work.
Exactly, yeah.
If we sit around that table sometimes stay for a little while and eat some chips and have some beer.
And say the things that you don't normally say unless you're drunk, exactly.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, yeah.
But what I'm interested in as well is the fact that some companies try, I was in one of the incubators with a startup for a bit, and they have these kind of distractions for like basketball. They had a basketball court in the centre of the office. It was great fun.
In the office?
It was great fun, but it was really noisy. Really noisy. So if you
that can really annoy people.
Yeah, I mean, you ended up going down. As soon as someone started playing basketball, you'd drift down there and start playing with them, and you get completely distracted from your work. And then you get pool tables and foosball tables.
Foosball,
they're just they're they're kind of distractions from what you're doing. And I appreciate that everyone needs a distraction, but more often what we need as knowledge workers is a different space to go and think about things. And,
so breakout areas, quiet areas.
Lateral thinking.
Yeah.
And like I know this is going to sound a bit odd, but I get most of my ideas either at,
I don't know where this is going.
Yeah. Is it in the shower?
At 5 a.m. in the morning or in the shower.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's quite a popular sort of concept about lateral thinking in the shower. I'm the same, things that quite often occur to me in the middle of the night.
So I'm just thinking, like, what we should, if we're going to encourage that kind of, what we're trying to do is encourage that kind of problem solving kind of approach, but in providing different environments for them to do that. And I think we have to rethink about how our offices are designed to achieve that. Really think 21st century on this. There's not, and I've seen some. We've talked about activity-based working, and I know people around town that are doing activity-based working. And
what does that mean?
Activity-based working is where you co-locate with the people. So you've got a portable machine.
Yes.
You store your machine away each night. You've got a rack that you can all store your machines at night.
What would I do with all the shoes under my desk?
Well, that's a good question. I know
this is one of the issues that
you have to not treat your desk as your station where you can.
How would I cycle into work, which makes me very happy, and then look presentable?
Did we find a solution for you, Kirsten?
Yeah, would you? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to hold you personally responsible for that.
We've got lockers and stuff. We could look at something similar, but
But
the point is that they so every morning they come in and they choose the desk that they want to work at.
And I've actually worked in a place that was fully along those lines. So we had a thing on wheels that we could drag around. Yeah. So we'd lock away our laptops and that and any other personal items.
Yeah.
I didn't find it that great actually, because there's some people that actually refused to move and always had piles of rubbish on their desks.
Yeah.
And then I found that people just sort of spent a lot of time trying to get away from people they didn't want to work with.
I've seen that actually. There was that was interesting when we were talking about the squadification that Trade Me. There was a couple of people that didn't want to be in the same squad, and they kept moving around to try and.
They're selecting their own squads, weren't they? And they just kept putting their names on.
Other stuff.
Other stuff, basically. And if it's a person put their name
if they
beside,
don't like each other, they're not going to work well together, are they?
Well, it's self-organising and it works out rather than being, forced into situations they don't want to be in.
It's bad when the feeling isn't reciprocal. That's if one person likes another person but the other person doesn't like them back. It kind of gets a bit awkward.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think the spaces, like what they've got and what Spotify have got, for example, is they've got spaces for the teams to go and break out into. And and each team has got its own space, so it can kind of create the environment it needs to do its thinking, which I think is quite important. And then they've also got the
general areas
as well, and their kitchen areas and their sort of food areas, and that kind of stuff. And they've also got places that you can go out and distract yourself completely with their array of different. They had a PlayStation, an Xbox, and a Mega Drive, I think, and that kind of thing. But I'm just saying, I don't think that's necessarily the solution. The distractions aren't the solution. I think creating spaces that people can think and solve problems in is what we actually come to work for. That's why I come to work. And so anything that encourages that, I think, should be.
I've got another list I printed out, which is stuff that makes people feel happy in the office, and I think you've touched on some. There's some other stuff here as well. Sociable colleagues, smiling co-workers, obviously not the sort of thing you can create, but obviously makes people feel happy in the workplace. Doing tasks that have actual meaning, good training programs, a friendly environment, and short cigar breaks. They call them cigar breaks. I quite like that, but that's like you were talking about, a space where you can actually have a think about things. And I am a smoker, and sometimes I crack a problem when I go down for a cigarette. It's
and I'm a former smoker, but I still go out with the smokers sometimes and chat. I think it's a really good place. It's a good place to go and think about and talk about things.
Apart from all that secondhand smoke.
Well, that's right.
Yes, yeah. How do you measure workplace happiness? I've heard a few ideas.
I was thinking about that this morning actually. I thought it would be quite a nice thing to do. But I guess one of them was something we talked about before with the smiley faces.
The Nico calendar.
That, but then there's also workplace surveys, And in fact we do have one that we do every year with World Blue.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not necessarily about actually workplace happiness.
It's more about democracy.
It is more about democracy, but that's one of the things that people enjoy about working here. So it's one kind of measure, I think.
Well, one thing I'd love to try out is you have buckets, and you have a bucket which is, I had a terrible day, and I had an okay day, and I had a really fantastic day today, and everybody's got a tennis ball, and it's not got your name on it or anything. It's just a plain tennis ball, and when you're leaving at the end of the day, you put the tennis ball in the corresponding bucket, and then at the end of the day, you count it, and you can get a good gauge as to how everybody felt.
It's all about asking the right question, and that's right. I mean, that's a great thing to do. I think as long as the question's framed correctly, you get the response you want. So you're not talking about in general.
You're generally happy, but today, how was it for you?
Yeah.
How was your work day? How was your work day?
We should do that. Okay, can we get some buckets, please?
Yeah, we need to get
let's do that.
Tennis balls.
Great. Okay.
And we should. I mean, what I like about this, and like the agile way of working anyway, once you take the lid off this thing and you put it in the team's camp to organise how they want to do things, and give them their sort of you empower them to, it's really got no ceiling. Well, within reason, but you've got no ceiling on ideas. You can experiment. You can do all kinds of stuff. It's it's much more fulfilling working this way than it is. I think about all those dreary offices that I've worked in the past, and a lot of the time when you're in those kind of environments, you expend a reasonable amount of energy trying to, make it better, work around the things that have been set up to sort of that you feel are impeding your progress and all that kind of stuff. You'll find alternatives, and the idea around this is that you as much energy as possible goes into what you actually have been asked to do, and you don't have to expend any
to do that.
Yeah, that's right. I remember working in a stock traders assistant in a stock traders office before, and it's just a highly stressed atmosphere, and everybody was incredibly aggressive to each other and just outright mean to each other all the time, and it was really intense, and everybody just drank really, really heavily every single day after work to alleviate it somewhat. And everybody had a lot of money. Everybody had a second home in Spain and a Mercedes and whatever, but they were not happy people. And for some people that's their main driver, is the money and the material stuff. But for me, I just had to get out.
It's interesting to have that contrast, isn't it? It really makes you realise what you want to do and where you want to work.
And I think sort of. We've all seen The Wolf of Wall Street, and those guys are just addicts. They're addicted to all kinds of stuff.
Power.
Power, money, sex, drugs.
Everything.
But
doesn't sound so bad when you put it like that.
That's right. But it does become a bit of a burden if you do it day in, day out, I think, from sort of...
Well, it's not sustainable, is it?
No. And the thing, from my experiences of working in startups, we kind of had similar things going on where you were working crazy hours, especially if you're trying to get something off the ground. And so you'd be working weekends, and you'd be working 14 hours, 12 hours a day, or whatever it was. And on the amount of coffee that we were drinking to sustain that, you had no option but to drink wine, alcohol, beer.
Lower your blood pressure.
Lower your depress your system enough, because alcohol is obviously a depressant, so that you could sleep. To counter effect all of the caffeine that you've been sticking into.
What I found with the last place I worked at is we were all pretty good friends, but in a prison mentality kind of way. Things were so bad at work, so toxic, and we were so overworked and had so much pressure on us that we spent a lot of time together talking about work and drinking. So we formed really great relationships, but in a really toxic way.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. It's kind of like a battlefield. Brotherhood,
it is.
Sisterhood.
It is. But interesting, I met up with a bunch of them last week, and they've all gone on to different things, except one person. But we've maintained that friendship, but it's so much better now because we're not just sitting around complaining and finding that commonality and something that's very negative. We're talking about the new things that we're doing, and it's really a much more interesting and fun time.
And obviously it's an us against them situation.
It became very much that in terms of management and worker bees.
That's right. So that's not going to get a great result for the company at the end of the day.
No, well, we all left. Like, there's a bunch of us that just left. So they lost good people.
Yeah.
Well, management are responsible for setting a culture better. I remember working in that telecommunications place before, and we got a new manager, and he came in and he said, "You guys, I expect you to work hard, expect you to put in, the hours we need to get stuff done, and it's my way or the highway." He actually used that term, and instantly he turned out to be fired for embezzling funds. So,
but
you
want to do it his way, do you?
Just a terrible culture to create. So management does have an impact.
Absolutely.
It's like if you look at the Toyota way and the kind of the pillars of lean. the foundation is management and their leadership.
Yeah, and I think here we're really lucky because we've got someone who's really willing to experiment. He's very people orientated, and he really believes in these principles. So we're lucky we've got that coming, from the business owner downwards, and then obviously we're all working towards the same thing as well.
That's right.
He's the one who's usually practicing fly fishing or skateboarding.
He's
through
an
the
ideas
office,
man,
is,
he's being creative, he does that
right,
stuff. So that's nice. I was just remembering an occasion, a friend of mine was telling me they got this new boss and a new CEO. He came in, he gave a speech at the start and he said, I just want you all to know that I have an open door policy. But he followed it up with, of course I don't mean it won't literally be open. Which made me laugh a lot. It's a great example of what not to say.
Yeah, that's right.
And he had an office with a door on it. Pretty much.
There's some great books to read around this stuff in terms of the anatomy of peace is one example, which talks about if you're at conflict with somebody, you can't treat them like a human being. When you're in a warring state, you immediately objectify, because that's the only way. Literally, if you're at a war state, that's the only way you can kill someone is by treating them as an
It's
object.
so dramatic. I didn't want to kill anyone.
I know, and so if you're
but you want to win, basically.
Yeah, it's a win. And there's no option but winning. And you have to objectify that person to beat them. And I've heard it so many times in terms of my wife was talking about this person. There was a yoga challenge, a 40-day yoga challenge, for example.
So doing yoga every day, 40 days, yeah.
And it's the person who gets to the most. Oh, sorry. There's a certain threshold. Once they cross that threshold, they're recognised as completing the challenge. And she was in competition with somebody else, and she completely objectified this person in order to achieve her win. So that's all I heard. The language she was using around this person wasn't by name. It was
so amazing to think of yoga as a competitive sport.
I know. And my wife's that kind of Mrs. I'm not competitive.
Yeah, but it's when you set yourself a challenge, sometimes being spurred on by comparing yourself to someone else helps, doesn't it?
That's right. I'm just saying that you can still treat that person as a human, and not necessarily.
Can you?
Yeah, I think so. You don't need to go into a warring state. The anatomy of peace talks about it in detail.
Right.
And so the sort of the steps that you need to take in order to stop objectifying people and treat them like human beings. And part of that is
I do agree actually. I think offering each other support to achieve a personal goal for me would work better than someone saying, well, I've done X many and you've done X many.
And just part of my reason for saying about the competition sort of stuff is a lot of teams that work in organisations get into a competitive state with each other. Who's got the highest velocity? Who's done the most stories?
Like on Silicon Valley the other night.
Yeah,
you haven't actually seen this yet, but we'll give it to you. And they just introduced Scrum. Who was that? Jared said something like, "It's just a competition to see who can work faster."
Yeah, Scrum is just a way to get people to work harder.
It's very funny. You're going to love it. Actually.
So, and the whole point being is that they all work for the same organisation, and the ideal outcome for the organisation is they work together.
They work together. Particularly in this situation, if these guys are in a startup. Yeah. But
that's
actually competitive.
So whatever the organisation can do to encourage that working together, spirit should be competitive. We've seen it so many times when we run those workshops. The paper plane game, for example. We've got two teams basically at war with each other, trying to beat each other, and then you remind them in the final sprint that they're actually working together.
Same company.
Actually, the first time ever around that on Monday, and there's obviously two teams, and they started out being a little bit competitive, but one team, as hard as they tried, could not make a successful paper airplane. It's the first time I've ever seen it.
They weren't ladies, were they? Because I can't make one. I find quite a lot of ladies can't.
No, there's two guys and a
interesting.
We had the same on Friday. Do you remember?
Yeah,
I've had it before.
But the
teams
actually at the end, the other team felt for them and they joined forces.
Was that without prompting from you? Because I've always had to sort of prompt and say, you could help those guys out.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
God. So that worked quite nicely for that exercise.
Absolutely, and it was also showed the power of self-organising and working together and communicating and everything. So it was quite good. But I was getting a little bit worried because people were getting quite demoralised when they couldn't.
It is horrible when you can't make even one fly.
Yes. Yep.
If you're letting everyone down.
That's right. And so they had to. I think that. We reminded this team on Friday, the two teams on Friday, that they were actually working together. Did they want to share some tips about how to build planes? Because obviously one team was really successful at building planes, but they hadn't.
But I like that your team didn't need to be prompted when you
Yeah,
started on Monday.
that's great.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that's all we have time for
Yeah, that's
It is.
today. It sounds like we're going to start measuring our workplace happiness by using that bucket idea, which will be
Yeah.
That's
interesting.
right. And maybe show some leadership around happiness as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Giving the guys at least permission to be happy at work.
yeah, exactly.
If they're not already.
Cool. Okay, thank you, and we will see you
See you in a couple of
next
weeks.
time. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.